everybody. I'm very conscious that this is a bit of a graveyard slot, so I've hopefully make it fairly punchy and I won't take too much of your time. I think I've learned a lot this morning. There's been a lot of very interesting things going on, particularly from the last speaker, because again the fibre is always the last thing we think about, and that's given me some serious food for thought, so I'm going to have to think about that as well. And all my technical people talk about 10 gig. And actually really we ought to be planning on the fibre side for 40 gig by the sounds of it, and even more than that. So that's all been very interesting, and I was also very taken by Adam's presentation from Q, because I think that's a much more pragmatic approach to cloud. Because the people in I work for are very interested in what's the current shiny thing. I don't know whether many of you IT directors in the room are very interested in current shiny things, but my management tends to be thus, which is always a bit scary because they just give me the sort of make it happen kind of thing. So I think the point I need to make today is using cloud properly and effectively and in a way that it suits your organisation, and that's the key, it suits your organisation. So it's horses for courses. You choose the bit of the cloud that you want and the bit of the cloud you don't want. You don't have, but you kind of make it work. So it's a big hybridized infrastructure, which is why Adam's presentation resonated enormously with me, because I've had to fight really hard to make sure we use the right things for the right jobs. So first and foremost, I need to say to you, I'm not a technical well, I am fairly technical, I do understand these things, but I'm not a technical obsessive. I'm not a geek in any way, shape or form. I have several of those who work for me, but I'm not. What I'm interested in is technology really as a service. So it's actually a service to allow our students and our staff and everyone else to actually be better. So it's much more about supporting what we need to achieve as a service, which was why the UCAS boys' presentation this morning was also very relevant. So this is me. I'll let you read that. But as I say, I am a service manager by trade. I am not an out-and-out technical person. So don't ask me any technical questions at the end, because I won't be able to tell you. I shall point you to some of my guys. I think the first thing I want to say is getting to a cloud strategy is possible, but it's much less easy than the vendors and resellers would have you believe. I've got to the point now where I don't believe 50% of what they tell me, and then hopefully we get to where we need to be. So what you need to, again, understand is you can get there, but it does take time. It takes time and patience, and it can't just be done like that. You have to bring the people with you. So this speech will just talk about NTU's journey and talk about some timelines from 2009 to 2015. What we're going to look at next, and I've forgotten my prop. Never mind. I'll ask David to fetch it. It's in my... Oh, never mind. It's in my handbag. I have a little prop that I wanted to show you a bit later on. Okay. So, and one of the things I need to highlight is that IT departments are in a constant state of flux. You've got your developers who want to do loads of things quickly using Agile and all this kind of thing. And you've got the ops guys who are really interested in availability and stability. So it's a tug of war constantly between the two areas. It's not something that is easy to referee with, I guess I would say. I always find myself refereeing between these people who want to innovate and the ops people who say we can't do that because. So, to start, one of the things I wanted to put in today was, this is one of my coaching slides that I use to actually try and illustrate change and the way that IT departments have got to change. They cannot stay how they are. For those of you who can't read it at the back, this is the change house. And we have a room of contentment, a room of denial, the cellar of despair, and then you could go in and out of on an almost daily basis when you're in the middle of a change programme. The room of confusion, the room of renewal when you almost get there, and then you go back to the room of contentment. Everyone seems to think you just go around this loop once. You don't. You go through this and around this loop continually. And I get some lovely things about the dungeon of denial, because again, I think university staff are very good at denial. They're very good at just saying, if I kind of don't ignore it and don't embrace it, it'll go away. But in some cases, it doesn't. So we get your dungeon of denial, and you also get your shed of avoidance, which is over here. Because one of the things one asks these people when you look at this change model is to say, which room are you in at the moment regarding this change? And they all go, oh. And I said, the most unusual one I ever got was when somebody, because usually I put this on the floor and you have to stand in it, you know, like run around. And so we get, he actually stood really over there. I said, what are you doing over there? You must be in one of these rooms. He said, no, I'm in the shed. Because I am not changing at all. I am going to stay where I am. And you've got to work hard to make these people understand that change is a constant. It happens throughout life, and things cannot stay the same, and things cannot be the same, because we're living in a much an increasingly digital world, and our students particularly expect much, much more of us. And it's one of those really nice models that people find easy to accept. So one of the things I did a lot of when we first started this programme was trying to explain the need to change. And I would urge you to consider some sort of team coaching, because you've got to bring people with you. If they don't come with you, they don't embrace the learning that they need to do, and also they don't then make the most of what you eventually buy. So, moving on. That's the right button. In 2009, I arrived at NTU from the commercial sector. And lordy, what a shock that was. Those of you who work in the universities will understand how difficult it is to get anything done, how to get a speedy decision made, how to buy anything, all of that. And I used to refer to it as being desk-chewingly frustrating as an environment, because I like to get things done, you know, done, sorted. All the ends tucked under and everything nice and sorted. Anyway, so it took me probably about 6 months to get to grips with that kind of approach. And then of course, you find ways of working around it. And it's when I get found out that it really bothers me, because I always try and find ways to work around it and not get found out. But my current line manager is getting quite good at that, finding out what I've been up to. So, but anyway, in 2009, I was just landed with this fait accompli. Aren't we good? We bought you this, off you pop. And that became and effectively, for those of you who can't read it, the cartoon says, it's easy to put a square peg in a round hole. All you have to do is cut every single corner and cram it in as hard as you can. And really, that's the trap we fell into. So, the dogma at the time, so the culture was, oh my God, we don't involve the technical people to actually do this. We'll just go and decide to buy something and fall for all the messages that are coming out of their providers. So the dogma then was, absolutely everything can be virtualized, and I'll tell you then in 2009, no it couldn't. You try it on a big Oracle database and the whole thing falls over. It's cheaper. I kind of argue that as well in 2009. It will need less staff to run it. And again, that's all buts. So that's never been the case from my perspective, unless you get to some fairly serious automation. So this was greeted by my staff with utter incredulity. You haven't bought enough disk. There isn't enough of this. There isn't enough of that. What are we going to do about this? And this is because you didn't involve them in any of the decision making. I put Arsene Wenger up there because one of my staff is a massive Arsenal fan, and he is terribly long-suffering. And I just love that expression. What? You know, you've done. What have you done? So, we were given a virtualization platform, which worked a treat. We were given a top-end SAN suitable for the banking sector, which also worked a treat, I have to say. We were given not enough disk space, and a range of blade servers. Now, all of this was brand new technology to my team, and they worked very hard to try and understand it and make it work. And bearing in mind this is 2009, there was a lot for them to learn, considering we were moving from a distributed infrastructure, lots and lots of horrible physical boxes that you can't keep up to date properly, and all sorts of things. So, this allowed us to migrate from the old SAN, and I can't remember what it was now, to the new one. It also allowed us to virtualize 50% of our servers, and it also allowed us to consolidate all our backups, because again, I'm a great believer in horses for courses or backups. So I use Data Protector, and everybody can groan, but we've had that for ages, and it works for us occasionally, mostly. So, that did allow us then to kind of start bringing stuff together and recognising how much data we've got. So a lot of the messages this morning about data growth really resonate with me. I found out yesterday we backed up 6 petabytes of data this year already, and that's actually a really scary number. Because again, nobody throws anything away, which again is typical of universities, they just won't. Right, so, where am I going now? So again, we did get some service improvements. We got an immediate impact on the carbon footprint, because I got rid of all those grotty old servers that were 10 years old and were hanging around like a bad smell, or a lot of them anyway. We did reduce a lot of downtime, because if you get VMware right from the beginning, then it does help you an enormous amount. And it will reduce costs if managed, but it's insane to put a massive, or it was in 2009, a massive database on a blade and just use that for that. Because obviously you're not then sweating your VMware asset that you've bought. So you have to be really careful to learn about how to optimize the equipment you've bought. It will reduce costs if managed properly. So the minimum VMs we put on a blade server at that point was about 25. So it was quite a lot. It does give you the resilience, and it does give you, if you've got 2 sites, some means of DR, which we had at the time. Okay, so then we're moving way forward. So we got that stabilised. We used it a lot, VMware. We've kept upgrading it. And we've had lots of arguments about the cost of licensing, almost as many as I have with Oracle, but not quite. And they're on my, certain people get onto my naughty list, and Oracle's always on there. And there's nobody in the room from Oracle. Oracle's always on there. And who else is there? Oh yes, IBM. Yeah, they're always on as well, because of the licensing costs and certain other things. So at that stage, again, given coaching and given time, the culture then was that we were a happy team, because we could actually spend time and learn about what we've got, and we knew what we've got, and we'd spent a lot of time researching what we wanted to as a replacement. So at that point, I'll paint you a picture. We're in the middle of a long tender procurement exercise, because again, that drives me insane about public sector, but as Anna says, it's public money, we have to be careful how we spend it. So we did that. We were in the middle of all of this. And then, of course, estates, bless them, they decided they wanted to create a building site around my second data centre. And despite all of their reassurances about vibrations and dust and all this kind of thing, I really didn't trust the fact that they were going to keep that second data centre safe. The second thing they said was, oh, and by the way, for 3 months of the building programme, you're not going to be allowed in it. Sorry? Why not? What happens if something breaks? Well, you're just not going to be allowed in because of health and safety and all that, and the building sites and all that. Oh, really? Yeah. So, there we were, trying to refresh everything at the same time, so the programmes had to be built very carefully, and that then had to be built around rebuilding, the rebuilding works around the data centre. So they were basically going to take the top off, they were going to take the top 2 floors off, and they were going to take every piece of building around it off and just leave this bunker, effectively, in the middle. And I got more and more worried about that, so started raising Cain, effectively. So, just to go back to my theme, the dogma at the time was cloud first, every time. If we can put it in the cloud, we should. That was in 2013. Everything must be hosted externally if possible. Now that's the other thing. We talk about hosting externally. We don't talk about outsourcing. It's a question of terminology. It makes people feel a bit more comfortable, I'm told. So I always find that very amusing. And then we can automate everything. So that was where we ended up in 2013. One of the most stressful years of my life, I have to admit. So what we achieved was full data center refresh. We did a data center core switch installation, and then this is the kicker. Eventually they agreed to buy me a pod, which is a big metal box effectively that's got wonderful green cooling and all sorts of things in it. And so we were able to design, commission and build a second data center, so we got out of the way of the building works. So nobody could blame us for delays in the building, because the states are very good at that. I don't know whether everybody else's are. They're all very good at saying, it's AT's fault, but they didn't get the fibres in quick enough or any of that. We had no downtime, we got a solution we wanted, and we sweated our more expensive assets. Service improvements were, again, we reduced the carbon footprint. So, for instance, the 8 cabinets that were bought for me in 2009, was reduced down to 3, and I have twice the power and twice the storage. So we did all these things, and at the moment now the staff are starting to be much more confident. They're starting to argue a lot more. They're starting to, when somebody pootles along and says, let's put that in the cloud, you know, everything will be marvellous. Then they're starting to say, well, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? And that kind of approach is much better. It's a much more consultative approach in the department now. Some people don't like it, but hey. So I'm very proud of my troops for that, rather than just doing as they're told. So we reduced downtime again. We implemented peer persistence, which got us some great high availability. It allowed us to be able to shut and open storage all over the place, which is very nice. We've got the stretched VLAN now, and again, going back to high availability. Then, in 2015, they started talking about research data management. And take us into the public cloud. Everything will be wonderful. So we went to Office 365 first. That was, for students, that was dead straightforward. But the Office 365 for staff still hasn't been done. We managed it for students 3 years ago, and it's still kind of on its way. And at this point, we'd had what I'd call a resilient team structure. There was still much eyeball rolling. There was still much, this is just not going to be worth it. You know, this is going to waste money and all that kind of thing. So it's really, but they did, bless them, embrace it. They just said, OK, that's what the organisation wants. That's what we'll do. So the dogma at the time was, again, externally host everything via AAS or SAS or whatever, all those AAs that someone was talking about earlier on, Adam, I think. Public cloud can do everything we need, and this is the kicker. We retain control, and it complies with EU privacy legislation. Ha! I say to that, that's utterly not right. So it's okay, safe harbour will do the work. Yeah, right, that's not good either. Because again, it actually doesn't. It's a lot weaker. It's a voluntary adoption. And really, I don't want any of my private data belonging to students or my own, funnily enough, going outside of Europe. And I know Amazon just chuck it around Europe, chuck it around the globe as whenever they want. So, much more resilient team culture. So we moved into, these are the things we've done this year. So we implemented the backbone for research data management, and that's with Archivum, which is one of these really solid third-party things. Then we got ePrints, which our friend from Lenovo was talking about, and that's why I was interested in trying to get researchers to do the metadata stuff sooner rather than later. Because if you leave it to the end, they've all lost interest. They're into the next bid bar then. So we did all that, and effectively we've got a bit of a public-private hybrid cloud thingy, and it works for us. And I think that's one of my key messages from today, is that it can be done, but you need to make it work for you. There was a big push at one point to use Azure for test and dev, which is a marvellous idea. However, if you renegotiate your MSDN licensing, it turns out way cheaper. So you really have to look carefully at what your vendors and resellers are telling you. And one of the things I have learned is we use specialist, not generalist providers. So we always try to find somebody who's actually done all this before, or who's got some really good, strong case studies who can actually say, we can help you. And we did it at our own pace. And the other thing that I find quite astounding was, if you ask them, providers cannot predict how much things are going to cost. So we've implemented a Microsoft Store One solution, which is where you store on site for your fast access, and then they gradually deprecate it further and further into the cloud. And then that's for unusable data at the moment. But then when you want to archive it, how do you get it all back? How do you put metadata on it, and how do you put it into your archive solution? So that's where we are on that one. So, lessons learned from this whole process. We could design, build and commission a data centre in 14 weeks, which I was absolutely amazed at, but we managed it, as I say, very stressful. We didn't need one of these big amorphous pieces of matrix software, because we're not like HP's matrix, because we couldn't really sweat that. We use elements of all these other things, and that allows us to do what we need to do. So we don't need this single pane of glass that everybody seems to talk about. So we didn't then. Anyway, we might now, but we didn't then. High availability can be continuously improved. We've now got a hybrid cloud, and it's only partially automated. It's only partially automated because of the dreaded legacy applications. Everybody's got them. If we were starting from scratch, it would be marvellous. The world would be wonderful, but we're not. We're starting with huge, voluminous legacy applications that some developers twisted out of shape so it looks nothing like the base. So when you start trying to move it around and keep the interfaces going, it becomes impossible. So we've started a big exercise to actually make the apps we've got vanilla. So take all that bespoke development out of it to actually try and make it vanilla so we can do more sensible things with it. And it's not always, I should have put there, it's not always cheaper as an alternative to hosting on site. As Adam was talking about from Q, again, you can, in some instances, still build a little SQL Server farm of some kind on site, and it will be cheaper than it would be having it outside. And particularly if you have something in the cloud for more than 18 months, it can end up costing you a fortune. So you need to be really careful about what you put where. So, what's next for NCU? Well, we're outsourcing our website, externally hosting our website via a company called Squiz, which doesn't inspire me with confidence, particularly because they're Australian. But Squiz, you know, it really doesn't inspire confidence, does it? But they're apparently doing okay. We're talking about SQL CRM because, again, in the Azure cloud, because we're big friends with Microsoft apparently at the moment. So we're talking a lot about that. I'm just waiting for someone to decide what we're doing. I'm very keen on looking at software-defined networking. But the big, interesting, shiny thing for us at the moment is Wi-Fi location-based analytics. Because, again, we've moved into analytics enormously around the autonomy product, which we get on a special deal because we're education. And we're starting to gather masses and masses of data to put into dashboards for our senior management. And obviously, all our senior management loves a dashboard. So the Wi-Fi location-based analytics is starting to get very interesting because it helps you to pinpoint. So we thought we might be able to do our attendance monitoring via that as well. But again, we worked it out, it wasn't close enough. We ran a pilot for a while and it just wasn't close enough. So we put it in a building with an atrium, and that's always interesting because you've got people using Wi-Fi who are floating about in the middle, you know. What's this person doing there? Because it's not quite got enough beacons to kind of try and sort it out. So the next shiny new thing, and I brought one with me, but I haven't got it in my pocket, is iBeacons, which are these unintelligent Wi-Fi things. And they're only about this big. I was really surprised. I thought they'd be really quite big. They're only about this big. Battery lasts about 3 years, and you just replace them. And you just pull the back off and stick them on somewhere. However, they need, for them to work effectively, they need buy-in. So your person who's got their mobile phone needs to accept that signal. And again, it's that's a struggle, because again, if a student's got to do anything, they usually can't be bothered, unless it's really, really, really easy. So that's going to be the next thing we work on. Now, to steal something from Gartner, I don't know whether the Gartner man's here yet, but I'm going to steal something. I like the idea of takeaways. So what I want you to take away from today is financial pragmatism is essential. Do not believe everything they tell you, because in some ways there's usually an alternative that might be a bit cheaper. IT staff have feelings too, and try and remember that. They might not show it a lot of the time, but they do. Coach staff to embrace change, retrain for soft skills in service management, which again is what we did. I started developing my staff in service management as far back as 2010, and it gave them the confidence to understand that they would have a place in a very much changing organisation. And as I say, don't believe more than 50% that account managers tell you. It's snake oil, and it's never as easy as they say it is. And try it first on something inconsequential. So that's our journey. Hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Has anybody got a question like to ask just before we break for lunch? Well, I guess I got one, maybe if there isn't one in the audience, and that is if you look back over the last 7 years, obviously there are a lot of things that you've learned from that experience. Is there one thing that you felt that you moved and tried to do that on reflection now you would never do that again? You know, you've got something you could look back on.
Very interesting question. Well,
maybe I shouldn't have asked that question.
I think it's actually moving into diversity more quickly. So, you know, everyone's talked about today about having 2 cloud providers, see, I'd quite like 2 switch providers, but my boys are a bit wary of that, so I'm kind of living with them at the moment. And also things like diversity in your supply chain, because that's absolutely crucial. Because otherwise you get sucked into this ecosystem provided by one vendor, and that's not the right way of doing it. It's really not.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda, once again. And I think that's lunchtime for everybody, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.